All right, team, what's going on this Thursday? We all survived Tropical Storm Nicholas. I hope you're doing well with that. We are going to enter into week one of our D group this week. D6 week one will be on Sunday, and the lesson is the reigning Christ and the disciple. And each lesson, each year of D6 has a lesson like this, the very first one. And the purpose of it is to have a proper view of Jesus and as the object of our worship, as he's risen and he's reigning and he's holy and he's mighty. And so it's going to take us to Revelation chapter 1, to John's vision of Jesus on the throne, and the eyes of fire and the lightning and this all the imagery and the thunder that we see in there. And it's a lot different than maybe what we think of as Jesus as sort of a humble, meek and mild person who he was while on earth, but now he is a reigning king. And so that's this lesson is all about our worship and our prayer life. Are we praying as if Jesus is mighty and on his throne? Or are we praying as if Jesus is still that meek and mild servant that lived in Nazareth? And so that's our question, and that's where we're going to be moving today. Our goal is to cause all of our disciples to be worshipers of Jesus, that God deserves our worship, that he is grand and regal and beautiful and majestic and powerful and knowable. And because of that, we ought to worship him because he's God. And that's where we're wanting to go today. Some interesting stuff that goes on in from assignment 1 is about John hearing the loud voice and seeing the vision there. It mentions the 7 churches in verse 11. And if you were part of our series with Dr. Moody, he detailed a lot about those 7 churches. And most of those churches had a major flaw. Some of them got a good attaboy, pat on the back. But we see that these churches, some of them had walked away from their first love. The church of Ephesus, Smyrna, church that would suffer persecution. Thyatira, church had false prophets, on and on and on. And so if it may be some questions there, and just some answers you could say there is, hey, these are lessons that we as the church today can learn, that we may fall into one of these categories. That like Sardis, are we a church that had fallen asleep, that needed a wake-up call? And they'll be used as an example there. They were historical churches in time and space, but also for us is a kind of a wake-up call, if you will, to if we may fall into one of those categories. And then verse 12, we see the golden lampstands. That these 7 golden lampstands represent the 7 churches, and so it gives us a picture of the church being arrayed around Jesus in worship. And so I want to highlight for you the front page of your lesson. There is an assignment 1, assignment 2, and assignment 3, and a scripture to memorize. Right, we've given the students that task. But for us, there's some other materials that are super helpful. So if you'll just turn one page over, right, there's a literal real life scenario, right, where you can kind of play that out. It's a great intro if you wanted to kind of start your lesson. Also, there's some on your own portions where are sort of reflective questions. And then there's also discussion questions. In the past, I've taken these discussion questions and created a new cover page. I haven't done that this year just because of time, but I do suggest you answering these discussion questions and talking about these discussion questions with your students as you read through there. So the on your own and the discussion questions are going to be a big help to you as you go through each part of this lesson. What I'm going to do in my group is I will literally, when we get to assignment 1, the feedback on it, I'm going to go to kids in my group and I'm going to say, hey, Sage, what did you say on this? Carson, what did you say? Denson, what did you say here, right? I'm going to ask my guys one by one, and I want them to get in the habit of sharing what they wrote. If they didn't answer it, and they say, I don't know, I had trouble with that one, then maybe I'll spend a little bit more time there. But for the most part, that's what we're going to do. I want to hear the take that every person has as we go through that. All right, and then we assignment 2. We're looking at the same passage. We get into the creatures and the elders and the angels worshiping God. We're going to talk about prayer here a lot. What is our response in prayer? Right? We oftentimes in prayer, one way of worship through prayer is to pray the attributes of God. Each week, we're going to give you, Erica helps to kind of pull these out for us each week, or give us a focal point for one of the attributes of God. This week, that attribute would be the eternality of God, that He's eternal, that He's always existed and always will exist, for the God who was, who is, and is to come, right, as Revelation said. And so one of the reasons we worship God is because He's the eternal one. He has never been a point where God didn't exist, and there never will be a point where God doesn't exist, right? And for us, being finite and our lives are so short, this is should inspire awe, honestly, in our lives. We ought to have thanksgiving for who God is and what He's done in our lives, right? That's worship. My worship, one way I describe worship is my whole life response, not just Sunday morning at 11 or 9:30, not just Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, right? But worship is my whole life response for who God is and what He's done, right? My whole life, Monday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Friday night, whatever. That's my life response, is my worship. The things I do that matter to me the most, that's my worship. And you know what? If you want to talk about prayer, I've always taught the ACTS model of prayer, the ACTS, A being adoration, right? I begin with worship instead of beginning with request. The Lord's Prayer, the model prayer, which we spoke about last night at Renovate, is a good example of that. It begins with hallowed be thy name, worshiping God. And then the C of Acts, confession, that I need to lay out any sin I have in my life before the Lord. And then on to T, thanksgiving. I thank God for what He's good in my life, for the things that He's doing, maybe even for the tough times in my life. And then S, supplication. I begin to pray for others, right? For us, we're in a small group now. Maybe we begin there by praying for the kids and the leaders in our group. Or maybe there's our neighbor, our family, whatever. And so it's just an easy, simple way to think about prayer. And some of these kids and even us as leaders, we need some training in prayer. We need some practice there. And this is a good time for that. And then on to assignment 3, begins to talk about the eternal throne of God, that it is forever and ever. No beginning, no end, right? God's only middle, right? He always was. It's mind-blowing, and we can't fathom it because we've always been in time and space. But yeah, that's what we're looking at today. God is worthy of our worship, right? Because He's eternal, because He's outside of time, because He's God. This is a way to say it. Not just because of the attributes, He's just God. And that's where we need to be. I'm so excited for what's going on in D6 this semester. We had a new student add last night, which is sort of a nightmare on our end, but also I don't ever want to stifle a kid from wanting to grow in their faith. And so girls, I've talked to some of you that we're going to add a new girls group tomorrow, and I'm excited about that. And also will help control the size. Some of those junior high girls groups were getting pretty large. And so remember, we will meet at 9:30 for prayer. I'll try to have the music a little quieter where we can hear and pray. And maybe we'll have the kids go play ping pong somewhere else. But, man, just the energy we had, and kids are excited about being there. That was sweet. I know that I'm taking on Rod's group this week. So he's going to be out of town. Remember, if you're going to be out, just communicate that with myself or with Erica, and we can help coordinate what to do on that end. All right, guys, so excited for Sunday. If you need anything, please reach out to me or to Erica, and we can help you with that. Of course, you got our contact info, and so excited. You should have gotten an email from Tiffany Doss also. With the contact info, please reach out to those parents. And if you didn't get your students' contact info, please do that on Sunday. That's a good thing to have. Most of you did that naturally, I think. All right, guys. Love y'all, and I'm praying for you.